All right. This is great. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Ken.
How you doing today?
Doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. Man, I love having Michael emceeing because he just does all my work for me and I can just dive right in. So let's get going here. I'm a chief evangelist. You're a chief evangelist, but you've got a vice president appended to yours. What does the chief evangelist do? Help me out here so I can please my boss in the same way as you've pleased yours and achieve that level.
So I think I have the most fun job in all of AWS. I get to work with all the different service teams that are building all of these amazing services for our customers. I get to understand what it is that they're building, what customer problems and challenges that they're working to solve. And then I get to take that and explain it to my audience. And that could be something as simple as a tweet. It could be a little bit of code. It's likely a blog post. Sometimes it's a bit of a video. It's almost any of the different formats that are available. I'm willing to try just about anything to make sure that the message gets across.
How did you land in this job? Like, how did this role evolve? Like, did you apply for this knowing this was what was going to happen at AWS? Did your college counselor advise you down this path? How'd you find it?
Oh, it was, I think, earlier than that. It seems to me that early in my life, I really developed, I think, this knack for understanding and explaining. And to me, what you can't fully explain something till you understand it. In programmers' terms, I think of it really as building a really complicated data structure in my head and then walking across that data structure and then turning it into words or pictures or whatever that might be. The first professional time this happened to me, in my mid-teens, I was lucky enough to work at one of the first computer stores anywhere in the world here in Seattle. This was back way before the IBM PC. This was back at the time of the Altair and the MSI. I'm supposed to be closing a tab here.
Yeah, I think you gotta. Sounds fine to me, but I think you're getting something for other viewers.
I'm not seeing that tab that's supposedly open. Okay, let's close that.
I don't see it on my end either. Let's play find the tab game that we all play so often throughout the day.
Yeah, I got one more thing I can do here. Disconnect that. Okay, sorry about that. All I've got open is the video chat and our questions.
It said it was fixed, so I think we're good to go.
Oh, okay. Mysteries of audio sometimes. All right, so how did I get here? So I was working at this first computer store in Seattle. This was around the time of the Altair. And my official job at the store was to open up all the boxes of books and magazines and brochures as they arrived. I was supposed to just take them out of the boxes and put them up on the shelves. But being curious and knowing just a little bit about this brand new industry, I would spend a lot of my time actually flipping through them as I was shelving them. I'd often borrow them for the evening, read them on the way home and on the way back. And I quickly developed a good sense of what this brand new industry was all about. I understood the hardware. I understood, at that point, there really wasn't much of a software business. But I really enjoyed just absorbing all of this and explaining it. And the cool thing that happened was customers would walk into our little store. They'd ask the other employees, can Altair do this? Or does this memory card work in this system? The other employees were certainly enthusiasts, but I don't think they had really done as much as I had to understand all this tech. So despite the fact that I was 16 years old, they would say, well, that kid over there in the corner, he can probably explain it to you. And then somehow 40 plus years later, I'm still doing effectively that same job, understanding things, being really enthusiastic about it, and then explaining it to an audience.
Yeah, I think that enthusiasm and genuine curiosity and interest is really where it's at. I mean, I know from experience as I was kind of figuring out what I was going to do here in 2010, leading to my role today, I went to your talks. I read your blog posts. And I would say that comes across pretty quickly that not only do you know what you're doing, but you actually care about it. And I think that's a pretty essential ingredient for me. So thank you.
You're really welcome. That's really cool to hear. And to me, caring is all about what are we empowering developers to do? It's like you're giving developers this gigantic box of tools and some raw materials and saying, build something really interesting. And sometimes it's interesting just in the sense that it's just kind of shiny and flashy and stuff's moving all over the screen. But sometimes it's interesting in the sense of, I just solved a problem that I had, or that my family had, or that my paying customers had. So enabling this creativity, this innovation has really been part of AWS since the very beginning.
Agreed. I mean, AWS set the foundation, for me, API wise, it was what was the trigger where this is no longer a hobby kind of plaything, and it's actually something I can deploy infrastructure with. So 2007-ish is when I made that shift. I'm like, I'm going to focus on this API thing, and which at Postman, this is what we're all about, are APIs. So from the AWS perspective, I mean, I think I understand why APIs matter to AWS, but what's your view on why APIs are so important to AWS as a company?
To me, APIs are this invitation to developers. It's saying, we've got all this really cool functionality, and then here's some documentation, depending on the language, here's some modules, here's some header files, here's some templates, whatever it takes. Here's the way you can get to all this amazing functionality. And then APIs and standardization and versioning of APIs basically says, here's a stable foundation that you can trust, that you can build on, that if you make something, there's this implicit commitment by the vendor of the API that says it's going to be around for a while. So you can use this as a basis for whatever it is you'd like to do.
I can totally support that. I have the first library that I wrote against S3. I think it was 2009 for all of my articles and research that I do for my work. Still runs. I've never adjusted it. I've never tweaked it, and it's never failed me. And that's 11 going on 12 years of the same piece of script running without any maintenance. And I think that really speaks to what you just said. So
that is really great to hear. And I'm sure the entire S3 team would love to hear that as well. Because it's not something that comes for free. There's always this call to innovate and say, we know how to, there's so many things we know now that we didn't know back when we launched S3 back in 2006. But those APIs are that commitment that says, build something just like you did, and you're not going to have to keep making modifications to it down the road just because we woke up one day and said, oh, we changed our mind. Here's a different and incompatible way to do things.
Yeah. S3 and EC2 are both kind of foundational concepts in my world. I picked up Lambda and a few others along the way, but I just can't keep up. How do you keep up with all the services and still be such a prolific storyteller around all the services?
I absolutely for sure don't keep up. And one of the things I think is really important when you're in a role like mine is you can't pretend to be somebody or something that you're not. There's so many things about our services that I for sure don't know, that are in many cases our customers understand each of these services better than I possibly can. What I can do is I can become a momentary instant expert on one of these services just long enough to grok it in great detail, write a good blog post, get that out to the audience. But I honestly don't remember all those details. And occasionally I'll be hunting for something. I need some knowledge about something we've launched a while ago. I'll do a quick search and I'll land on one of my old blog posts, and I'll literally read it again to re-explain it to myself based on the way I understood it 5 or 10 years ago sometimes.
I totally relate with that. My blog is my essential memory bank. I'm constantly rereading my own work. So agreed. So that's one of what you just got out there is one of the reasons I'm always telling non-developers or tech savvy or tech curious kind of business users to get involved with APIs, because I spend a lot of time. I'm an engineer. I can definitely go deep on a lot of these things, but I don't always need to, and I don't always have to or should. And I try to encourage more business users to think about things at that level. You don't have to be an expert in EC2 deployment or containerized deployment or cloud formations to understand how it stitches together. So do you think business people or non-developers should care about AWS and the APIs and the other details there, the technical details?
Oh, I totally do. And they don't need to understand the fact that they don't need to know the ins and outs of specific data types and parameters to the APIs. Maybe they don't even care about the actions, but they should understand what the service is, like what does it take in, what does it do, what does it produce? And if they can think at that somewhat modular high level and think, well, if I take one of these and connect it with one of those and put the output over here, what might I be able to create from that? So having that level of understanding, I think would be really worthwhile to just about anybody.
Yeah, as a storyteller, I'm always looking for the new ways to get people thinking about it and communicating around it. So analogies are always important because APIs are very abstract. They're not very tangible thing. And Legos are the biggest, I would say, the most common analogy I come across for helping people understand how do you stick these things together. You know, you've got the big bucket of Legos that I think everyone's kid has, just full of different parts and pieces. But then you have the templates and the kits. Does that analogy work for you in your work, or are there other analogies that you prefer using?
I don't tend to really express myself all that often in terms of analogies, but I think yours is a really good one. I do actually happen to be a really big fan of Lego, and I probably own 400,000 bricks in various shapes, sizes, colors, and styles, and so forth. But the idea of surfaces that can connect together, the idea that they can go together in a lot of different ways, the idea that for most of us, I think just having those parts just laying around unconnected, it's this invitation to do something, right? It's like it's incomplete. It's just begging you to say, take me and do something really interesting and original with me. Like if you just take several Lego bricks and try to figure out the number of different ways you can put them together, you can quickly multiply out into the billions just with a couple of bricks. And so I think APIs are that same way. We think I take this one and I get this data from it and I mix it here and I mash it up a little bit with this other one here. That's the empowering aspect of these APIs and these services.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like the analogy part, I agree that sometimes we should stick a little bit more in business value, business reality, and not go too far into analogies, because then I think we can lose people if you don't understand all the details of what's going on. But really trying to bring it home and make it relatable is what I'm always trying to do. So in your work, your day-to-day work, what's the most effective tool in your toolbox? What's your go-to tool?
Oh, let's see. There's a couple, and the two that I can't do without lately are a mind mapping tool called FreeMind. I've been using FreeMind probably for 10 years at this point, and it's an essential part of my blogging process. So one of the things that is a standard part of the way we build new things at Amazon is that the team starts with a document called a PRFAQ. That's a combination of a press release and a frequently asked questions list. That one document, the first part, the press release, in a page and a half, gives a nice, concise description that's customer friendly, that explains what the service is, what it does, how customers can use it, what it's named, how it's priced. That's concise. And then the FAQ can be 10, sometimes up to 50 printed pages of content. The very first step that I do before I've even used the brand new service, I take that PRFAQ and I go through it with my mind map, and I build this mind map that makes this nice visual representation of all the information that I can extract out of that document. At the point when I've got my mind map, I actually don't ever refer back to the original document again. I've taken this somewhat unstructured PRFAQ and I've put my structure into it. Once I've got that information, writing the blog post is actually pretty easy. So FreeMind is my first tool. The other one that I've become a real fan of is OBS, Open Broadcaster Studio. I really enjoy using it to put together all kinds of video presentations and to learning to use effects and filters and green screens and multiple cameras. It's kind of, a lot of people think, oh, OBS, that's for streamers. But anyone who's presenting video online probably should put some energy into learning what OBS is and how to master it.
Interesting. So you're, with the mind mapping, you're really distilling it down into the most essential building blocks that you're going to need to make it make sense in your world, right?
I am, and I think of it as something of a leveling out process where sometimes the team might choose to focus on a couple aspects of a new launch that they're the most proud of, or they put the most energy into getting just right. I respect that, and I do listen to that side of it. But the mind map gives me, on a single page, and I think you call it a space filling curve, it gives me this just nice kind of even keeled representation of all the different facts and figures and thoughts about the launch. So after I put it together, I can step back a tiny bit and make sure that I'm giving equal weight to the different things that I choose to highlight in my blog post.
Interesting. Do you ever like zoom out as part of your mind map above and beyond any PR FAQ, just like to look at groups of services and clusters and think about the big picture?
I sometimes do. And often I'm aware of several different things that are on different launch cadences to launch within AWS. We generally have a pretty strict policy within the blogging team of, if we are aware of several launches that are each racing to the same finish line, we don't generally try to relate those blog posts to each other, because the team isn't going to launch something until it's ready to run at scale and to serve customers well. So even though we might think, okay, this one is great, and this one is great, and if you put them together, it's even more cool. We generally, especially when we're getting ready for something like reInvent, you'll find that each of these blog posts is essentially a silo that we will acknowledge things that we've already launched, but we would never acknowledge something else that's launching concurrently at reInvent, because we're never sure it's going to launch until it does. And
yeah,
we love the fact that when Andy or Werner or Peter makes an announcement from the stage, we don't have to think, are all of the dependencies satisfied for this blog post? We know that as soon as they announce, we can just hit publish and it's out there within a minute.
Dependencies. I think that's a familiar word for a lot of folks. So I like that. Minimize your dependencies so that things are, operate on their own and stand on their own. I like that.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna go to the questions from the audience. We got a question. I'm currently studying for my cloud cert and hope to land a spot on the cloud team at work. Have any good advice for those chasing a dream to be a cloud guru?
Yeah, continue chasing that dream and do the things that are going to get the attention of that team. So pursuing the certification is a wonderful thing. Figure out if you're already in a job that is somewhat adjacent to the team that's doing cloud, see if there's a way to kind of innocently invite that team to help out with your current project and say, okay, we're not, this particular project doesn't have any cloud in it, but could you help us a little bit? And then perhaps selectively reveal what you know already about the cloud and say, could we do this and could we do that? And before you know it, they're going to pick up and say, wow, you seem to know enough to be helpful here. Come on aboard our cloud team. So actually putting things into practice. And if you can't do it directly on the job, figure out a way that you can do it off the job. Do something on your own, maybe use the AWS free tier, build something really cool. And I always advise people when they're in the learning process to put some energy into sharing as well. That could be a blog post, it could be a video, it could be a tweet, it could be bringing your colleagues together at some point and saying, I played around with Lambda over the weekend and look at this really interesting thing that I figured out. What do you think this might do for our XYZ project?
The Amazon free tier and side projects. I highly recommend this. I'm trying to articulate this to my daughter who's in university right now. Showing her the potential of side projects and then blogging about it. She applied for a museum internship, and that she noticed in her traffic logs that they looked at her blog, and it kind of brought it home. So definitely the Amazon free tier, I think, to support that is a great way to start and get the word out.
There's a lot of access in there too. There's so many different services. You can get a taste, and you can run something fairly substantial with the amount of Lambda and EC2 and containers and a lot of the ML services. You can learn quite a bit, and you might even want to challenge yourself to say, I know for sure if I go beyond the free tier, it's not going to cost me all that much, but just set yourself an internal rule and say, how much can I do and how much can I learn without actually spending a penny?
Well, and that process, I would say, helps you learn how to manage your bill, like trying to, and AWS has a good job of notifying you and letting you know. But if you're concerned about it, like all the billing management stuff will help you really stay within that free area. So highly recommend.
Although I would say that there's nothing wrong with investing in your own career. I think that's something that is kind of, developers have something of a bad reputation within our industry of going to school, getting their CS degree, and then never buying another book ever again in their life. I think it's really important that the degree is your starting point that says now you're now in the industry. You now need to put a lot of your energy into staying current and moving ahead. And if that means buying books, paying for some training, paying to use some services, that's how you stay current and fresh in our industry.
Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile having your Amazon bill, I think, kind of attached to that your career hip. I think it's a worthwhile investment. So I have a personal need out of getting this because I was talking to your team, and I'm constantly building. I do a lot of demos and tutorials using different AWS services. Doing marketplace deployments right now. So I use a lot of AWS APIs, and your team introduced me to Smithy, which gave me a view of the AWS landscape programmatically I had never seen before. And can you give me any insight into this? I know it's been around a little bit, but it's still fairly new. Do you know much about Smithy?
I don't know a ton about it. I'll fully admit that I didn't know anything at all about it until I clicked on your link in our preparation doc. But then I saw it and I said, oh, this is the external name for a service that I've seen in use within Amazon for a really long time. So we're very, very big on always figuring out ways to increase productivity, reduce potential for errors, build things in an abstract way. And Smithy is just one of those ways that we do it, where you can basically say that this is what my APIs look like. This is what the data types flowing back and forth are going to be. It seems like we're becoming more and more willing over time to share some of what were once the secrets, and saying this works for us. We think it might work for you, and we think by sharing some of these things, we're going to help developer productivity worldwide effectively.
Yeah, it felt like something that had been around internally because I could tell the effects of it. Like there's consistency across some of your services that I noticed, and I could tell people were using some other tool that maybe I didn't have access to internally to kind of standardize and harmonize and make things a little bit consistent. Because I know you guys are a lot of different teams, and there are some differences between some of the services and how they're rolled out. But I could see this definitely played a role in that. So, well, tell your team thank you for being more public with it, because it's definitely making my life easier. I'm deploying more APIs using AWS API Gateway, Lambda, RDS, and others, and it helps me really stay in tune across services in a programmatic way. So tell them thank you.
Great to hear.
So as we kind of go into the home stretch here, we just got a few minutes left. So AWS has made a pretty big impact, I would say, not just on the tech space, but on every industry that I can think of. I mean, it's totally transformed and changed my career trajectory in the last 15 years. So you're a piece of that. So when it comes to the historians looking back, I mean, what do you want to be known for when it comes to your role, and what kind of impact you made? What kind of story do you want to tell out of that?
Great question. And what I'm going to just remember or be remembered for is just that I opened a lot of people's eyes to the power of AWS, and going all the way back to the posts I wrote for SQS and S3 and EC2. It really wasn't about bragging. I don't think there was any hype in there. It was simply, here's something new we have. This is what it is. This is what it does. And here's how you can use it. And I always think of these things as effectively invitations. And they're these kind of invitations for developers to take them. And again, the innovation, the creativity. I love to hear success stories, not just of what people built, but like you were sharing about your career and having said, well, because I learned something. If someone comes up to me and says, I read your blog post, I learned something new, I built something, I got a new job, I got a promotion. There's this word that I love in our industry now called upskilling. If someone has upskilled themselves and they got a promotion, they got a better job, doing better for themselves, doing better for their family. If I help that to happen, that's really satisfying.
Yeah, I can definitely, the story I told you already, but my wife has her master's in folklore and storytelling. So how does all this happen? And that's another kind of ingredient I threw into my storytelling as API evangelist and now Chief Evangelist, is telling stories that matter. And back to that emotional connection that you made with me, and I know you make with a lot of other folks, is you're stirring and you're creating each next wave and next generation. And I think your work's just going to keep echoing down that chain. So I think long after you're retired, I think you're going to be cited, aside from all the content. I mean, just the content you've published over the last 15 years. I mean, that's going to live on for a long time. Yeah. So thank you for all your work. Thanks for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time. Keep building good things. Any parting words for the audience you want to say? Anything interesting you want to share?
Thanks for being in tech, and thanks for learning, and keep on building, keep on learning. And then, like I said earlier, keep on sharing what you do. And it's not always easy at first. Writing's a really difficult skill. Practice it, you'll get better as you do it. But sharing what you build, what you learn, I think is a great way to get double value out of your learning investment.
I second that. Well, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate your time today. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.
Will do. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.